Hi everyone, welcome back to the Be Kind, Be Happy podcast. My name is Byron, and for today's story time, I'll be continuing with the Platform Sutra. Today we'll be going into chapter 8, Sudden and Gradual. So let's get straight into it. Before I begin, sudden and gradual is referring to awakening. Is it a sudden awakening or a gradual awakening? And in this chapter, the Sixth Patriarch, Master Neng, he contrasts the difference between his teaching and Shen Zui's teaching. Shen Zui is his someone that he used to practice with at Huangmei Monastery, where he became enlightened, where he received the transmission of the bow and robe to become the Sixth Patriarch. At that time, Shen Zui was the leading monk there, and it was said that he was going to be the Sixth Patriarch. And so, sudden and gradual refers to the two types of teachings. One that points directly to the self-nature to attain immediate enlightenment, and one that points to gradual enlightenment, gradual teaching. That is a long, arduous practice that helps build the foundation. For one to attain sudden enlightenment, one has to have cultivated in the past. So it's not like you can suddenly just attain the sudden awakening without having done anything in the past. But because this is a sudden teaching, the Platform Sutra, this is why it's highly regarded in the Zen Buddhist practice, the Zen tradition. And okay, let's get straight into it. So, chapter 8, Sudden and Gradual. When the Patriarch Neng resided at Baoling Si, which is Baoling Monastery in Kaoqi, Great Master Shen Zui was at Yuquan Si, Jade Spring Monastery in Jingnan. At this time, the two schools flourished, and everyone said Neng in the south and Shen Zui in the north. Hence, there was a division into the two schools of south and north, sudden and gradual. But students did not understand the purport of this distinction. The master told the assembly, in the Dharma there is fundamentally one doctrine. It is in people that there is north and south. The Dharma is thus a single seed, but in seeing it there is fast and slow. What is it that is named sudden and gradual? The Dharma is without sudden and gradual. It is people that are clever or dull. Therefore, the names sudden and gradual. But Shen Zui's followers frequently criticize the Southern school, saying, the Patriarch Neng is completely illiterate. How could it be better? Shen Zui said, he has attained the wisdom that is without teacher and is profoundly enlightened to the superior vehicle. I have not. In fact, my teacher, the fifth patriarch, personally transmitted the robe and dharma to him. How could this possibly have been in error? So before I continue, this is very humbling, very humble of Shen Zui to admit that it doesn't require Neng to be literate, to be able to read, to have attained the Dharma, because the Dharma transcends words. And the fact that his master, the fifth patriarch, has said that he has transmitted the robe and bow to Neng, how could the master be wrong? So he's actually supportive of Neng, and he has never, from his standpoint, criticized Neng's teachings. In fact, he has said, he is enlightened, I am not. So this is actually very important in the sutra, and also very important in understanding his teachings relative to Neng's sudden teaching. Continuing, I regret I am unable to travel the great distance to be close to him, but falsely receive the nation's magnificence. You people do not linger here, but go to Kaoqi to consult with Neng and have your doubts resolved. So he is very supportive of Neng, even saying, I'm not able to travel to him, but the people are still giving me their their verification. The nation is still giving me its munificence, but it is urging people, don't linger here, go to Cao Chi to consult with him and have your doubts resolved. One day, Shen Zui commanded his student Zhe Cheng, you are intelligent and wise in many things. Go on my behalf to Cao Chi and listen to Hui Neng's Dharma. Whatever you hear, memorize it and come back and tell it to me. Following his command, Zhe Cheng went to Cao Chi, where he joined the assembly and inquired of Hui Neng without saying where he was from. At that time, the patriarch informed the assembly, there is now a person hiding in this assembly in order to steal the Dharma. Thereupon, Zhe Cheng came forward, did obeisance, and told everything. The master said, you have come from Yu Quan Si. This must have been a plot. So immediately when Zhe Cheng had arrived in order to listen to the Dharma, to bring back to Shen Zui, the master, Hui Neng, immediately noticed it. He immediately sensed it. And so he immediately said, there's someone here looking to steal the Dharma. And so he pointed him out. The man, to his credit, immediately confessed and said, so he came forward. So the master said, you come from Yu Quan Si, which is the name of the monastery. This must have been a plot. To which he answered, no, it isn't. The master said, why isn't it? He answered, before I spoke up it was, but now that I've spoken up, it isn't. So the master said, how does your master teach his followers? So now he's curious, asking, how does Shen Zui teach his followers? To which Zhe Cheng answered, he always teaches his congregation to fix the mind, to contemplate purity, and sit constantly without lying. So now this is to say, this is clearly a very arduous, gradual practice. To sit constantly without lying down is something that you have to practice over a very long time. Not anyone can just suddenly start doing that. But the fact that Shen Zui can practice like that clearly shows that he's practicing a very gradual teaching. The master said, to fix the mind, to contemplate purity is a sickness, not meditation. How could it benefit the principle to sit constantly with a rigid body? Listen to my verse. You can sit in meditation without lying down from the day you're born, but when you die, you will lie down and not sit up. One always has this putrid skeleton. Why should one set such a task? Zhe Cheng did obeisance again and said, when I was at Grandmaster Shen Zui's, I studied the way for 9 years without achieving enlightenment. Now I have heard one explanation by your reverence, and I have conformed to the fundamental mind. I believe that the matter of birth and death is important. Would your reverence, in your compassion, teach me further? So the master said, I have heard that your master teaches students about morality, meditation, and wisdom, but I do not know how he explains them. So this is the very famous 3 teachings that the Buddha expounded, and basically everything within his teachings over the 49 years revolved around the 3 teachings in morality, meditation, and wisdom. Morality is the precepts. It's how you conduct yourself and behave throughout the entire practice. Meditation is how you cultivate concentration, how you cultivate the dhyānas, and then wisdom is the final end product, which is prajñā, the wisdom of the Buddha, right view. And so even the Noble Eightfold Path revolves around morality, meditation, and wisdom, and everything does. The Four Noble Truths, basically everything. So now he's asking, how does he teach the 3 teachings? How does he teach morality, meditation, and wisdom? To which he asks as well, what are the characteristics of his practice? Tell them to me. Zhe Cheng said, Great Master Shen Zui teaches that not to do evil is called morality, To practice good is wisdom. To purify one's own intentions is called meditation. Thus does he teach. I wonder, with what dharma does your reverence teach people? On the surface, this seems perfectly legitimate, right? To not do evil is morality, yes. To practice good is wisdom, yes. To purify one's own intentions is meditation, yes. So let's see what Master Neng has to say to that. I say that I have a dharma for people would be to deceive you. Okay, so he's saying that he doesn't have anything to teach. So he says, to say that I have a dharma for people would be to deceive you. I simply release people's fetters according to the situation. The samadhi of provisional names, such as your master's explanation of morality, meditation, and wisdom, is truly inconceivable. But my view of morality, meditation, and wisdom is different. So he's not actually criticizing Shen Zui's perception of the three teachings. He's actually praising it as inconceivable, but he just says that his view is different. Zhicheng said, there can be only one type of morality, meditation, and wisdom. How can there be any other? The master said, the morality, meditation, and wisdom of your teacher is directed at people of the great vehicle. So this is the bodhisattva vehicle. He's already praising it as the great vehicle, not the lesser vehicle. My morality, meditation, and wisdom are directed at people of the supreme vehicle. So he's saying that mine is the Buddha path. Your teacher's is the bodhisattva path, which is inherently already the greater vehicle, the higher vehicle. But he's saying mine is the one vehicle. Mine is the Buddha path. The enlightenment and understanding of people differs, and there is slow and fast in seeing. Listen to my explanation and see if it's the same as his. The Dharma that I preach does not depart from the self-natures. To preach the Dharma apart from the essence is called superficial teaching and is permanently deluded regarding the self-natures. You should understand that all the functions of the myriad Dharmas are all activated from the self-nature. This is the true Dharma of morality, meditation, and wisdom. Listen to my verse. So now he explains further with the famous four-line verses. For the mind ground to be without error is the morality of the self-nature. For the mind ground to be without stupidity is the wisdom of the self-nature. For the mind ground to be without disruption is the meditation of the self-nature. Neither increasing nor decreasing oneself's adamantine, the mind going and coming fundamentally is samadhi. So now he's talking about without error is morality, without stupidity is wisdom, without disruption is meditation, neither increasing nor decreasing oneself adamantine, so very firm. The mind going and coming fundamentally is samadhi. So we're not saying to stop anything, to stop the mind, but the body going and coming, the mind going and coming, that is samadhi with the right view, the right practice. When Zhicheng heard the verses, in gratitude he offered a verse that said, the five skandhas, the body of phantasmagoria. How could a phantasmagoria be penetrated to the ultimate? Proceeding back towards suchness, the dharmas are still impure. The master approved this, then said to Zhicheng, the morality, meditation, and wisdom of your teacher is for exhorting those of small capacities to wisdom, but my morality, meditation, and wisdom is for exhorting those of great capacities to wisdom. If you are enlightened to the self-nature, you need not posit bodhi and nirvana, nor do you have to posit emancipated perceptual understanding. Only when there is not a single dharma that can be apprehended can one posit the myriad dharmas. To understand this doctrine is called the body of the Buddha. It is also called bodhi and nirvana, an emancipated perceptual understanding. The person who has seen the nature apprehends the dharmas whether he posits them or not. Okay, this is very interesting. The person who has seen the nature apprehends the Dharma, whether he posits it or not. He is autonomous in his coming and going without stagnation or hindrance. He acts in response to the functions of students, and he answers in response to their words, always manifesting his Nirmanakaya. He never departs from the self-nature. He attains the samadhi of autonomous disportment in the supernatural powers. This is called seeing the nature. So there's a lot to unravel here. He's saying that if you're enlightened to the self-nature, you don't need to even talk about bodhi or nirvana, nor do you have to talk about emancipated perceptual understanding. Only when there is not a single dharma that can be apprehended can one talk about all the myriad dharmas. So first you have to return to the place where not even a single dharma arises. Not arises as an effect, but arises as a cause. Because as an effect, things are still going to be coming and going because of past causes and conditions. But as a cause, not a single dharma is arising. And to understand this doctrine is the body of the Buddha. And he says here that when a person has seen the nature, he apprehends the dharmas. So he apprehends everything, the teachings, whether he posits them or not. So he's autonomous with his coming and going, without stagnation or hindrance. So he's very free-flowing. He's not really doing anything with intention. He just is. He just bees. And how he responds is always in response to the functions of the students. And so he is always responding as opposed to reacting. Okay, so now Zhecheng further inquired of the master, what is the meaning of not positing? The master said, the self-nature is without error, without stupidity, and without disruption. In moment after moment of thought, prajñā illuminates, constantly transcending the characteristics of dharmas. Independent and autonomous, he apprehends everything. How could there be any positing? The self-nature becomes enlightened itself, sudden enlightenment and sudden cultivation. There is no gradual progression. Therefore, he does not posit all the dharmas. The dharmas are quiescent. How could there be a progression? Zhecheng bowed and said, I wish to attend upon you and will do so morning and night without remiss. Zhecheng was from Taihe in Zhezhou. The monk Zheche was from Jiangshi and originally of the surname Zhang and name Xingchang. While young, he was chivalrous. Ever since the division into North and South, although the leaders of the two schools had eliminated the distinctions of self and other, their disciples competed in their favoritism. So even the teachers, Neng and Sheng Zui, they were not competing with one another because they understood that they just have to practice themselves and they respected one another. But the disciples of each school were always competing. At the one time, the followers of the North School established Sun Zui as the Sixth Patriarch and resented the public's knowledge of the Patriarch's transmission of the robe. Thus, they enjoined Xingchang to come assassinate the master. Through precognition, the master knew what was happening and placed 10 liang of gold on the dais. That night, Xingchang entered the patriarch's room and was about to attack him when the master stretched out his neck to make it easier for Xingchang. Xingchang swung at him 3 times with his blade, but Neng was not injured at all. The master said, the correct sword is not false, and the false sword is not correct. Just take your money, do not take the life you came for. Xingchang fell prostrate with shock, and after quite a while, he came to his senses and sought Neng's compassion. repenting his error and wishing to leave home to become a monk. So he was clearly very impressed and was very repentful. The master then gave him the money, saying, "You should go. I fear my followers would harm you. If you can change your appearance and return someday, I will accept you." So clearly, Huineng held no blame, held no ill feelings, and even had so much compassion as to say, "Go now, because if I accept you now, people will want to harm you. So if you come back in the future time and change your appearance, I will accept you." Xingtang followed these instructions and escaped into the night. Later, he left home to become a monk, took the full precepts, and vigorously trained in Buddhism. One day, remembering what the master had said, Xingtang came from afar to pay his respects. The master immediately recognized him, saying, "I have been thinking of you for a long time. What night did you come?" Xingtang said, "Previously, your reverence disposed of my transgression. Now, although I have left home and am engaged in ascetic practices, ultimately it is impossible to reward you for your virtuous action. Is transmitting the Dharma and saving sentient beings all that I can do? Your disciple has been reading the Nirvana Sutra constantly, but I do not understand its doctrines of permanence and impermanence. I beg of your reverence, in your compassion, to explain these for me briefly." The master said, "That which is impermanent is the Buddha nature. That which is permanent is all the good and evil dharmas and the mind of discrimination." So clearly, this appears to be in conflict with what the Buddha preaches, right? The Buddha always says all the dharmas, good and evil, are impermanent, whereas the Buddha nature is permanent. And so he's saying opposite. And that's actually what is said in the Nirvana Sutra as well, which is why Xingtang was confused and asking for clarification. Xingtang said, "What your reverence has said is quite different from the text of the sutra." And so the master said, "I transmit the mind seal of the Buddha. How could I say differ from the Buddha's sutra?" Xingtang said, "The sutra teaches that the Buddha nature is permanent, but your reverence says that it is impermanent. And the sutra says that good and evil dharmas and the body mind are all impermanent, but your reverence says that they are permanent. This difference has made the student even more confused." The master said, "Formerly, I heard the nun Wu Jin Tang read through the Nirvana Sutra once, and I explained it for her without so much as a single character or single doctrine being different from the text of the sutra, and I ultimately have no separate teaching for you." Xingtang said, "This student's understanding is shallow, and I ask your reverence to reveal the teaching for me in detail." The master said, "Do you understand? If the Buddha nature were permanent, then no matter what good or evil dharmas one explained, not a single person throughout the entire eon would generate bodhicitta. Therefore, I preach that it is impermanent." I'm going to have to be right back because someone has come to the store in order to buy something. I will be right back. Sorry about that. I'm setting up a second-hand store just outside where I'm sitting right now, and I can see that there was a customer arriving. So I thought I'd see what she wanted, but she didn't want to buy anything. Anyways, continuing on. The master said, "Do you understand? If the Buddha nature were permanent, then no matter what good or evil dharmas one explained, not a single person throughout the entire eon would generate bodhicitta. Therefore, I preach that it is impermanent. This is precisely the way of true permanence preached by the Buddha. Furthermore, if all the dharmas were impermanent, then everything would have its own self-nature that would experience birth and death, and those true and permanent natures would not be omnipresent. Therefore, I teach that they are permanent, which is precisely the true doctrine of impermanence preached by the Buddha." All right, I'm going to have to reread this because this is actually very, very profound. So he's saying, like, the final sentence was saying that permanence is the true doctrine of impermanence, and that impermanence is the true doctrine of permanence. So if the Buddha nature were permanent, then no matter what good or evil dharmas one explained, not a single person throughout the entire eon would generate bodhicitta. So this is to say that if the Buddha nature was already permanent and you do not have it, then you cannot get it, because no matter what happened, if Buddha nature was permanent and you didn't understand it, you didn't realize it, you didn't perceive it, you didn't have it, then you can't have it. And not a single person would generate bodhicitta, because it'd be impossible, because you don't have it. Therefore, I preach that it is impermanent. This is precisely the way of true permanence. And so impermanence is the way of true permanence. My understanding of that is because the permanence of impermanence, that is to say that everything being impermanent is true permanence. So the only thing that is permanent is that everything is impermanent. Furthermore, if all the dharmas were impermanent, then everything would have its own self-nature that would experience birth and death, and those true and permanent natures will not be omnipresent. Therefore, I preach that they are permanent, which is precisely the true doctrine of impermanence. So what he's saying is that all the dharmas are permanent, which is the true doctrine of impermanence. So as to say that all the dharmas are permanently impermanent, I think. This one is actually very, very tricky, but I feel like this is actually very important to understand. I'm not at the level to understand this one yet. Because ordinary people and heretics are attached to false permanence, and those are the two vehicles, consider permanence to be impermanent. Together forming the 8 confusions, the Buddha, in his authoritative teaching of the Nirvana Sutra, destroyed their prejudices, and revealed his explanation of true permanence, the true bliss, the true self, and true impurity. You are now relying on the words, but are going against the meaning. With an annihilationist impermanence and a deterministic permanence, you have misunderstood the Buddha's last words, which are perfect, wondrous, and subtle. What benefit can there be in reading the sutra 1,000 times? Sing Chang suddenly experienced a great enlightenment, after which he spoke a verse which went, "Because we maintain our minds as impermanent, the Buddha preached permanence, not understanding his expedient means. I was as if collecting pebbles by a pond in springtime. Now, without expending any of my own effort, the Buddha nature is right before me. It was not bequeathed to me by my master. I am also without anything that I have that is attained." The master said, "You have now penetrated the true teaching, so you should be called thich, bowed in gratitude and retired." Okay, so this makes a lot more sense, because we maintain that our mind is impermanent. That is correct. And so the Buddha preached permanence to remove us from our attachment of impermanence. And the opposite occurs. Whatever we think is permanent, he will say that it is impermanent to remove us from the attachment of permanence. Similarly, if we actually had thought that it was permanent, he would have said that it is impermanent. So is it permanent or not? If you think it's permanent, he will preach impermanence. If you think it's impermanent, he will preach that it's permanence. So now, not understanding his expedient means, I was as if collecting pebbles from a pond in springtime. So just because he says that something is permanent doesn't mean that it's permanent. It's only an expedient means to remove us from the attachment of impermanence, and the other way applies. So if we think that the mind is impermanent, he's trying to remove us from the attachment to that by preaching in the Nirvana Sutra that the mind is permanent. If we think that the Buddha nature is permanent, then he wants to remove us from the attachment to the permanence of the Buddha nature by saying that it is impermanent. What happens is that when we realize this fundamental teaching, the Buddha nature is right before us, and we are also left without having anything attained, right? Nothing is attained because the teachings that we had attached to, we let go. We let go of the idea of the Buddha nature being permanent. We let go of the idea of the mind being impermanent. Very interesting. Continuing on, there was a boy named Shen Hui, who was from the Gao family in Xiangyang. At age 13, he came from Yuquan Si to consult Hui Neng. The master said, "You have gone a great trouble in coming such a distance, but have you brought the fundamental? If you have the fundamental, then you must recognize the master. If you see if you can explain it to me." So he's questioning, have you seen the fundamental? Shen Hui said, "Non-abiding is the fundamental, and seeing is the master." The master refers to the self-nature. The master said, "What will this novice say next?" Shen Hui then asked, "When your reverend sits in meditation, does he see or not?" The master struck Shen Hui with his staff 3 times and said, "When I hit you, do you hurt or not?" Shen Hui answered, "It both hurts and does not hurt." The master said, "I also see and do not see." Shen Hui asks, "What is this seeing and also not seeing?" The master said, "My seeing is to see constantly my own mind's errors. I do not see other people's rights and wrongs or good and evil. This is to see and also not to see. You say it hurts and does not hurt. How about this? If you do not hurt, then you are the same as a tree or rock. If you hurt, then you are the same as an ordinary unenlightened person. Who would become resentful? When you just said seeing and also not seeing, you thought there were 2 extremes, and your hurt and does not hurt were your misconception of birth and death. But you don't see your self-natures, and you are just playing around." Shen Hui bowed in gratitude. So this is very fascinating, because Hui Neng, the Sixth Patriarch, immediately recognized that this man was just playing around with words, but not understanding the fundamental, but was merely claiming to have understood, but just playing with words, saying, seeing and not seeing, hurt and not hurt. So the master went on to say, "If your mind is deluded and you do not see, then ask a spiritual compatriot to show you the path. If you are enlightened in your mind, then you will see the nature yourself. Cultivate in accordance with the Dharma. You are deluded yourself and do not see your own mind, but you come ask about seeing, my seeing and not seeing. I see and I understand, but how could this take place of your delusion? If you see for yourself, then you will be able to take the place of my, then you will also be unable to take the place of my delusion. How can you ask about my seeing and not seeing when you do not understand and have not seen for yourself? Shen Hui did obeisance once again, making over 100 prostrations. Seeking to put an end to his errors, he served Hui Neng as attendant and never left his side. One day the master announced to his assembly, I have a thing without a head or tail, without name or title, without front or back. Do you know what it is? Shen Hui came forth and said, it is the fundamental source of the Buddhas. It is my Buddha nature. The master said, I told you it is without a name or title, but you have called it the fundamental source, the Buddha nature. You just covered your head with thatch. You've become a follower of only discriminative understanding. After the patriarch's extinction, Shen Hui entered Chang'an and Luoyang and widely disseminated the sudden teaching of Cao Qi. He wrote the explanation of the central doctrine, which circulated widely. This is the Chan master of Herze. The master, seeing that many of those who would ask about the schools with evil intentions had gathered beneath his dais, took pity on them and said, students of the way, you should eliminate all good and evil thoughts. That there are no names that can be named is to name the self-natures. The non-dual nature is called the true nature. It is upon the true nature that all the teachings are established. At these words, you should see for yourselves. When they heard this explanation, they did obeisance and requested that he be their teacher. So this is very compassionate of the master, to see that a lot of the people within the assembly had evil intentions. He took pity in them and to explain them. And what he said, that there are no names that can be named, is to see the true nature. The self-nature is to see that there are no names that can be named. And non-dual nature is called the true nature. Okay, so this is the end of chapter 8. I hope you liked this episode. A lot shorter than the previous one on the encounters, but this one also had a few encounters. So it was very interesting. It was almost like story time. Hope you like this episode on the Be Kind, Be Happy story time, the 8th chapter of the Platform Sutra. And if you like what you see, please like and subscribe. And if you have any comments or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Thanks again for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. The next episode will be about proclamations. This one is actually another very short one, and it's about his declarations. It's basically about his final words, his final proclamations. Hope you like this episode, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. Thanks again, everyone, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.